Welcome to ProThink, a continuous improvement webinar. Today, you're going to join us on a cruise liner. Now, we've got our webinars in the theme of a yacht, or in this case, a cruise liner, because we are taking you on a journey. And in this agile world we live in today, businesses are no longer built on firm foundations with concrete and bricks and mortar, but need to be adaptable. And that is best symbolized by the concept or theme of a yacht. And we've got a cruise liner because we have had over 600 people registering to be on our webinar today. So without further ado, I'd like you to join us on the deck and grab a beverage of your choice. Maybe it's morning or evening, so we've got an array of beverages available for you to choose from. This cruise will be conducted by ProThink NXT, and we are all about creating abundance in business by making them work better. On the left of the screen there, you'll see we've got some gears, and those are our different data practices symbolized there, or our different practices rather symbolized there: data, automation, change management, project management, process and strategy, blockchain and compliance. And today, coming out of our process and strategy practice, we will be presenting this webinar with Andrew Lenti, the CEO of Top Tactical Intelligence, MJ Fick, our PMO Director at ProThink NXT, and Vincent Labuschagne, our COO at ProThink NXT, all with vast and deep experience in continuous improvement. And in the background, we have Dr. Michelle Boyson, our CEO, Moira Bassingswaite, our marketing coordinator, and Abby Simon, our community manager. For those of you that are joining this webinar live, we have a 3-in-1 offer for you, which is valid until the end of July. You will be able to get a 30-minute session with us, normally valued at $169, in which we will go through what you need to be doing in your business for continuous improvement to be effective. We'll give you a 9-step guide on implementing continuous improvements in your business, as well as a free demo of a software solution that assists greatly in continuous improvement. And if you'd like to take up an offer further on that software, then you can get it for $25 per person per month. There are terms and conditions that apply to that. So book now if you are live with us. So this webinar is about the 7 mistakes that are made in continuous improvement, and it's a high-touch webinar. The 7 mistakes or 7 areas are a lot to get through. So this one is high-touch, but it is part of a webinar series, being the first in the series, and so you can look forward to diving more deeply into each of the 7 points we raise. And we will be featuring a software solution that is built on 6 Sigma principles throughout this webinar. And so without further ado, we're going to move over to the webinar. So we will be recording this webinar. So if you do want to have access to the recording afterwards, it will be shared with you in an email after the webinar. Okay, so thank you very much for that reminder, Michelle. The first mistake that we find, and we will now start to engage MJ and Andrew in our discussions here. The first mistake that we find is this concept of cost cutting, thinking that continuous improvement is about cutting costs. And it's a valid thought. We're not refuting it, but perhaps there's a different way of thinking of continuous improvement. And Andrew, I think before we jump too far into this first concept, we're going to be basing a case study on a company called Alvis. So as we discuss the various mistakes, we're going to use a company called Alvis as our case study. We'll maybe talk about a few other companies as well. But just to contextualize, Andrew, if you can maybe tell us a bit about this company called Alvis.
Thank you, Vincent. Hello, everybody. Today's discussion, we're speaking about continuous improvement. My team and I have been in the business now for 6 years, working with companies, different parts of the globe. And out of all the different case studies that I wanted to bring today, Alvis seems to jump out at us. Why is that? Well, Alvis is a company serves about 8,000 patients a year in behavioral health services and reentry services, people coming back into society from the judicial system. We were contacted in 2020 by the head of continuous improvement. She had just been hired 6 months prior, and she was looking to set up her team, and she was looking to make some difference in the company. And basically, what came to us was a request to bring the culture of continuous improvement into a company. And what this means in bringing to a culture of continuous improvement is that it's not exactly what most companies come to us looking for, to save money, to cut costs, and to basically create capacity and get things done quicker with less people. What they said was, we're ready to roll up our sleeves, and we're ready to make an investment to change things for the better. Vincent, if you could take me to the next slide, please. Basically, what Alvis is looking for, and this is where we really connected from the beginning, was improving the standards. And if you take a look at this slide is very intuitive for it's telling you continuous improvement. It's about being one place today and taking your company to another place tomorrow. And that other place is standard number 2. Today we have one way of doing things, and we want to do things a bit better with a bit more efficiency next time. And as you can see in this diagram, what this means is that you're actually making an uphill battle. So being in the software business, we're very accustomed to getting requests to see a demo or a request to do a project together, and immediately, or should I say in the first few discovery sessions, we find out, wait a second, this is not exactly what you're looking for, because we're a company that's going to help you work harder to get more. And if you're looking to go on a downhill slope, that's a different story. You're looking for some type of RPA automation that's going to immediately free up space and cut responsibility. In this case here, the team at Alvis came to us saying, yeah, we're looking for 3 major things, and we put them on the slide here. We want to enhance role and responsibilities in the company. We want to reduce process waste. Actually, I'll say it the way they said. They want to improve their processes, which translates into reducing process waste. And finally, us being a software company, we say, well, one of our bread and butter offerings is that any process that you have that is a recurring process that is already quite standard, we can automate that for you. We can show you how to structure it and get it in front of each process owner so that they can easily and in a very flexible way pass that from one user to the next, making your company more resilient. And as you can see here, remind you again, we want to move from one standard to the next, and it is an uphill approach. So once again, we made our mistake in the first few years not highlighting this immediately with potential client prospects. And now we show this immediately. We say, look, are you ready to roll up your sleeves? Are you ready to suffer growing pains, for the lack of a better word, at the beginning? And that's what Alvis was ready to do. They've been with us now since 2020. And since we've done this, we've had a couple other interesting stories together, launching KPI, structuring KPIs and launching KPI solutions, as well as recently audit accreditation for one of the biggest health services audit that exists, the CARF audit. So this was...
So Andrew, we're basically saying cost cutting is not going to help with continuous improvement. It's more about having a sound base of understanding what your business has and getting it to a certain level. So do I have my processes documented? Do I know who's responsible for processes? Before you can then go on a journey of trying to improve those things. You don't have that baseline, you can't do improvements.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest with you, of course, it's always about finding places to become more efficiency. And that's why we use the term waste. Every company in the world, no matter how mature, no matter how great you are, you have waste. You have the possibility to reduce that waste. Now, you know, if you work in a growth-oriented company, which I had the luck to have done in the first 20 years of my career working in companies that are constantly growing, well, waste reduction means expansion. It means freeing the hands of some expert that you can move to the next big project that's going to make the company great. Now, obviously, there are companies out there that are like, I can't wait to free up some space so I can make layoffs. That's part of life. But of course, when you're talking about continuous improvement, we're very focused on working with companies that want to grow. And when people ask me, what's the elevator pitch? Who's your target market? My response is always, I'm looking for growth-oriented companies. Growth-oriented companies are looking to work harder to do more.
Yes. So I think that puts us neatly then into the next mistake that companies make, which is, do we need our processes? Do we need to have them documented? Do we need to know what they are? And that's that sound foundation. So MJ, maybe just talk us through your view and your experience around processes. Are they necessary? Does it matter?
Thanks, Vincent. You know, my background is project management and especially in the IT space. And I've seen so many times. I started off as a junior project manager. You go to users, your business, and they say, develop this system for me, and I want this report, and I want that function, I want this capability, and you go and do it, and it's not always such a success. And then later on, after we started the business, and Michelle actually taught me about the importance of processes. When we start a project, we start by saying, so what is the business process? The business is very eager to tell you, I want this system and I want that feature and that report. And then we take them back and say, let's follow your business process. Why do you want it? What are you going to do with it? Where is it important? And driving out your systems requirements. So that's one example. Another example is most recently last year, I worked with a wonderful client here in South Africa with an ERP implementation. And their business users were obviously responsible for signing off that the system can go live. So they had to test the system. And we had to test every single business process. And they had to document their processes. And it wasn't such an onerous task. We didn't go out and full on process flows and maps. They basically, each team leader listed their process. They started with a list, and they broke that down into smaller steps and then the detailed steps. And they used that to test the system, and they had a fairly successful go live.
But surely, MJ, going to that level of detail, every single team leader documenting down to the steps of their process, that must take months and months, if not years, to do.
No, not at all. If I recall correctly, this was done in about a month, and it's not a month of full-time work by people. They were still doing their jobs. People know what they do. So the team leaders, and I'm sure they delegated to staff members, they know what the steps are. And the whole organization participated and did it in a very small time. It's not that onerous.
So amazing that it's something that can be done so quickly, and it's such an essential part. Without that foundation, we can't make incremental changes that improve our business. Now, Andrew, I think you've got a methodology that you'd like to discuss with us, where we run through setting up these processes, but it doesn't actually start with the process. There's some things we need to do before that. So if you'd like to take us through your methodology.
So again, I like to highlight, a lot of times you see a lot of people online, consultants, people speaking about process optimization and great leadership architecture in a company. And you always hear people, processes, technology. And the thing that amazes me is that you never really hear anything about organization. And Steve Jobs said something along the lines where some of the best ideas come from just reorganizing your company. So, even my company, TOPP, there's your acronym, Technology, Organization, People, Process. And organization is huge. I worked in big companies that were constantly taking teams, taking functions, moving them around. So that if you take a look at our key steps to launching a continuous improvement program in a company, step number one is just to make sure everybody knows every function in the company. And what that means is just getting the organizational chart in order. And what that really means is team by team, function by function, role by role. So you're putting together your org chart, and you're making sure that everybody that's involved in the exercise, which hopefully is the whole company, at least at one point, understands the function is this, and the support for this function is this list of roles. That's step number one. As soon as you do that, people start understanding more or less, they start getting their bearings straight, where things are going to take place and what people you're going to hear that are going to be involved. Step number two is where you start having some fun. MJ talked about getting things done in less than a month. It's where you start meeting with the roles of the people managing those functions, and you start having meaningful discussions, identifying your process taxonomy. I think in the last 5 years of my corporate career, I went around from team to team, getting them to give me a list of their macro micro processes. And by the last few years, I was able to do that in 2 1-hour sessions to a decent extent, even if I was speaking to somebody operating in an area that I never worked before. But that's the number one thing you want to do. You want to be able to just have your processes there, so you can have any new person in the company, any new person on the team, regardless of if they have experience or not, to be able to go look and get a good understanding without disturbing anybody what's going on just by looking at that process taxonomy. Step number two. Step number three, this is where you really start rolling up your sleeves. You're getting to the granular level, and you're saying, okay, let's imagine somebody's working on this process. What's going to happen if this person wins the lottery and they're not here in the office tomorrow? And the way you're going to get around that is you're going to have a nice checklist that tells you do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And that's exactly where you want the level you want to get to. You want to be able to have all your processes archived, transparent, visible in a place where everybody can access those. And then in the moment somebody says, you know what, I really want to know more about this process. What's the day in a life of a person that's working on this process? That checklist is the starting point. Now we're going to talk about documents. Of course, every process has process flow documents, procedures, job aids, cheat sheets or whatnot. But that checklist is what really gives you the visibility to somebody's existence. They're sitting in a chair, or maybe they're standing on an assembly line, and the course of their day needs to go through this checklist. And before they go home, more often than not, they have to tick all the boxes. Step number 4 is where you really start connecting the people to those processes. And you're taking, whether you stay at the process level or whether you even want to go one step further and go to that checklist step level, you're now taking the roles that you got in the company, and you're using the beautiful RACI matrix, something that I'll confess I never even seen until 2015, allowing you to identify project by project, job by job, or process by process, who's responsible for this process, who's accountable, who should be consulted in the event that there's a question mark, and of course, who should be informed on when something happens on this process. It's a really remarkable tool that allows you to really clear the air, really cut down on confusion when it comes to getting things done. And I'm sure most people in this call, on this cruise line, know very well how the effectiveness of this. And then finally, what most companies are trying to do anyway, step number 5, is get your documents in order. And we've been lucky in the last couple of years. We've made some interesting breakthroughs in technology, allowing you to organize your documents in a different way. I'm still shocked when I speak with companies and they say, yeah, we got document management solution. We're using SharePoint. Well, SharePoint is a platform where you can put all your documents, but it doesn't guarantee you that you're setting them up correctly to support a continuous improvement program. And this is where the step number 5 really comes into play, regardless of whether you're using software or not. You're taking each document and you're lining it up to the process, so that I'm new to this company, I'm new to this team, without having to call anybody, without having to hold a meeting or bother anybody. I can immediately go take a look at a process and look at all the documents in the archive, get myself up to speed without slowing down the business.
I think that's something that's actually so overlooked when implementing something like a document management solution. The focus is completely on how do I house all of our documents? What's the taxonomy to be able to find the documents and the hierarchy? But that almost never speaks to how the document is used in the process.
Yeah.
Where do I go to get the template? Why is this template linked to that process? Why is this template here? And what's the output of the template? Where does that go? We focus always in the document management system just on the output. So Andrew, I think you've highlighted to us this nice 5 steps. and let's maybe dig a bit deeper into it. I'm just fascinated by how the organization structure actually comes before the process. So I plug the process into the organization structure. And I had this situation at a client where somebody needed to do an audit on a supplier database. And just to get the person that was going to do the audit was a nightmarish task, to find functionally who is supposed to be responsible or take ownership of this database, and therefore initiate an audit to make sure the data is clean. So maybe just if we can dive into a bit of depth around how this organization structure fits into this basis that we're trying to create.
Yeah, so I mean, what you see here is just part of our job there. Your step number one, box your company into functions. So you're just having that high level discussion with all the sponsors, all the decision makers that are saying, yes, we want to invest in continuous improvement. What can we do? Well, the first thing you can do is tell us how everything's organized here and who's responsible for it. And as you can see here, you're setting up an org chart. You know, you're setting up your org chart. You're assigning corporate officers. In this case, you're assigning roles. Depends on how deep you want to get. And at this point, you now immediately know, if I need to speak about finance and accounting, you know exactly who you should start with. And you know, the more granular you get, the more efficient you're going to get. And Alvis, this was the first thing we did with them. They gave us their org chart, and you'll be surprised when you go to companies, you know, a lot of companies have their org chart. Sometimes they just have it in a PowerPoint slide. And in a lot of times you hear immediately, it needs to be updated. So this is a great exercise, especially if you can give this to somebody on a digital platform, because immediately we gave every user in the company the possibility to just navigate with their mouse, clicking up and down. These are the teams, these are the people. Now, what we have on what you don't see on this screen, but what you could go to is each team, you get to drill into the roles. And you can see on this team, we need 5 business analysts. We currently have 4. We need 2 project managers. We currently have 3. In other words, overstaffing situation. We potentially have the possibility to move somebody to another team. And this, just to give you a statistic, something like this takes about 45 minutes. Honestly, as long as you have the right people in the company.
It's worth highlighting that, Andrew. 45 minutes. You know, again, you have this perception, if my org chart's not right, it's a several hour exercise that I've got to undertake to get it fixed.
Yeah.
Just 45 minutes. That's amazing.
I would highlight, if it doesn't take 45 minutes, it's a good red flag telling you that not the right people are in the room. And you need to get a couple more people in the room to help you get down to 45 minutes.
Absolutely true. And then we now have the foundation of our organization structure. Now we can plug processes into that. So just talk us through that in a bit more detail.
And this is where MJ, once again, is a ton of really great techniques, going straight into it, team leader, and saying, okay, we got everything boxed up. Now tell us about what you do. And, you know, sometimes people aren't used to this conversation, which is normal. These are operational people that have been doing a great job making their company successful. But when it comes time to drawing the skeleton of their company, it doesn't always happen that easy. And that's what your job is, as a continuous improvement agent, as a change agent. And so what you're doing is saying, okay, just tell us everything you do. Tell us about all the things coming in and all the things coming out. This is why your clients are paying you. This is what your value chain is all about. And as you do it, you start to, you're always, we have a special template where we show them a restaurant and we say, okay, this team over here does the pizza and the pasta. This team over here does the fried meats and fish. And they can see at the high level, you got the pasta makers, and at the lower level, you got those people making spaghetti, ravioli, and everything else. So you get the and they see the macro process relationship, and they start to connect the dots and give you their world in this format. And then they start saying, okay, yeah, this is what I do. If I have to speak to somebody and can only have 10 minutes to talk about what my team offers this company, these are the things I would talk about.
Right. And I think maybe just going to MJ's point about it not taking a lot of time, when you apply a structured software solution, I think the next slide tells us you can do it even faster than just taking a month. Yeah,
and I mean, here you have, we're just zooming into one team, and you see immediately you got your macro processes, micro processes. So put yourself in the shoes of a first timer on the job. You know, let's imagine you're taking over as the team leader of this team, sitting down with the exiting team leader, and you want to know, okay, what am I taking on here? And immediately you can see team by team that's underneath you what the macro micro processes are. And this is the starting point. This is the starting point to have serious, meaningful discussions with the process owners and say, how can I help you? What do you need to get this job done better?
And MJ, I mean, what value do you see as a project manager trying to implement a new software solution? If you had this as a foundation to work with, what would that mean for you?
I mean, that would obviously drive the discussion to drive out your requirements for the solution. But, you know, the processes drives out the requirements. You use it to test and you use it to communicate to people. There's always change management involved in any systems implementation or any change project for that matter. And you can use the processes to communicate the details of the change, and it drives your training program. Yes.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing from what you're saying, MJ, is it takes time, and I'm now adding some extra words here. It does take time to set up this foundation of understanding your business and your processes and making sure you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. But once that's there, then you actually start to realize efficiencies. Now you want to do an initiative, it's so much easier to understand these are the tests that we're going to need to run. These are the people we're going to need to engage with. So doing an initiative now becomes a quicker exercise.
It is, but sadly, what often happens is that there is a change and people document their processes, whether it's a process map or a list or on a spreadsheet, and then the change is over and it gets put in a corner. It's not used on a day-to-day basis, but you've created such a valuable asset that one should then use that and drive continuous improvement. You know, if there's a problem happening in a team, pull out your process and say, where did the process go wrong? How should we change the process? Can we tweak it? There's so many users.
So Andrew, does Presto have a way that you engage with it on a daily basis? Maybe if we go into checklists, that you are working in the software and therefore engaging in the processes on a daily basis?
Yeah, so when you get to this level, you see here we're at step 3, and now we're saying we have your microprocesses or your sub-processes, depending the language of the organization. Now we want to know, what is that day in the life of the person that has to carry this out? And you got your step checklist there. And at this point in time, talk about this a little bit later, but once you get this architected correctly and structured, you can now start thinking about automation. You can start saying, you know, this process here, monthly management reporting, it has 4 core steps. We can actually have those steps distributed to the right people at the right times, making sure they have the possibility to communicate to the company at what point they are in the workflow. But this is where the company really starts to gain resiliency and flexibility. If you can get each team understanding what they're giving back to the company by doing this, and offering anybody in the company visibility to this, once again, without disturbing people. If you have this, you know, the best way obviously is digitally, but you know, if you have this organized correctly so that you can immediately pick up this information and know step by step, you're in a really good position to start getting flexibility and making your company ready to take on more challenges. Here you see in a short amount of time with the CQI team, the continuous quality improvement team at Alvis, we cataloged 35 checklists. And you know, I spent most of my career in financial services. After working a couple of months with this team, I now have a very good understanding of what the behavioral health sector is all about. And that's just by cataloging processes, looking at checklists, and of course, interviewing the people that are managing these checklists every day, hearing about their pain points, which will come shortly.
Right, and I expect that from an executive perspective, I'm able to see the tasks that need to be completed that are outstanding, and sort of at any point in time, I've got an idea of what's happening in my business in terms of productivity and things that aren't happening. So from there, Andrew, we now obviously need to we're talking about being able to jump into the solution in terms of continuous improvement. A new person that comes into the business should be able to know what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And up till now, we haven't actually said that Joe in accounting is responsible for checklist A or process A. I guess that's what we're doing here now.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, to me, this is where the real magic starts taking its turn. So basically, where we want to put every role in the company attached to the steps that they're working on. If you're not familiar with the RACI matrix, you want to know who's responsible to do the work. If you look at the little icon, who's the person that's getting the work done? Who's the accountable person? Who's the person that's head is on the line, his neck is on the line, that the responsible party is doing the job correctly. And then my favorite one, especially coming from growth-oriented companies, spending a life in growth-oriented companies, the consulted party. This is the party that you can go to whether they're on the team or not, and they can go straight, and they are responsible to offer you the know-how they have. And if your company has that growth-oriented mindset, that means that, Vincent, you're an expert on this process, but you just got a great new job in a new department, maybe even a new country, and you're gone. But that doesn't mean if one day we need help fixing this process, if we need to outsource this, we have to really engineer it, your name is on the consulted list, and you may just get a phone call saying, we need 30 minutes a week of your time to participate with this team that's brainstorming the new organization. And that's the consulted party. And this is another great way to retain knowledge in the company and to highlight at a learning and development human resource level who knows how to do what, who has experience, so it doesn't just disappear when people start moving around. And of course, the informed party is, in the old world, it's anybody that you put in CC when you send an email. These are the people that absolutely have to know that something was done, even though they don't have a direct impact on the actual execution of the task, of the process, of the job.
Right.
And
if we then take that practically,
here you have a process step, monthly management reporting, 4 process steps, and it's clear to you that before we hit step number 4, where the head of sales is presenting the monthly management report under the accountability of the chief commercial officer. Before that happens, you have business analysts who are collecting figures from the sales team, and they're preparing the report. And there you have the head of sales who's accountable. It's accountable, but not responsible. From step number 3, reviewing the report, the level of responsibility goes up. Head of sales becomes responsible, and there the actual C-suite is now taking accountability for the report that's coming into the C-suite meeting. And from here, you can see we brought this logic straight into the Alvis world, and we went process by process, step by step, role by role, and we aligned people to steps, allowing people to start seeing, okay, I realized that I'm not really present in this process, but on this one step I am, and it's super important that I'm present in that right moment.
That's brilliant. So really, as you come into an organization, you can immediately see, I'm new to this process, I don't know about this monthly reporting. You can see, oh, I can consult this person, and I can get information from them in order to be able to do my job properly. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And so then finally, we can align all of this. I think I just want to pause here before we carry on and just reiterate to the audience, everyone that's listening, we're hammering on quite in depth around this idea of getting a baseline, getting your processes, understanding what the steps in the process are, assigning people to it. How does this plug into the organization structure? And if you don't do that, you are not going to be able to undertake continuous improvement because you don't have a baseline on which to improve. So it's really necessary to go into detail to understand these are the things you need to do. It is a massive mistake that a lot of businesses overlook the importance of having processes and understanding how they fit into job descriptions and into the organization structure. So the last one is now aligning these processes, these checklists, with the things that you use to do the job. Andrew, if you maybe take us through this, please.
So anybody looking at this slide, one of the first terms that probably comes to mind is IP, intellectual property. And a company is not leveraging their intellectual property if that IP is not available to whoever wants to see it. Now put yourself in the shoes of a new manager. If you're taking over on this team, how beautiful the world is before you know anything about monthly management reporting and before you start having any meetings or calling anybody, you know immediately there's a procedure, there's a job aid, there's a process flow, and there's a checklist. And before I take 1 minute of anybody's time, I'm going to get myself up to speed. And as long as that's available to you, your life and the company's life is much better. What's important is that list of 4, that's the complete list. Somebody has told you already and signed off saying, yep, there's nothing else. That's the entire universe of monthly management reporting. You can now go to work and start to get visibility. And this is where every company needs to be. Going back to the example I spoke about earlier, if you're using a shared document service provider, of course, everybody needs those type of things. You have everything saved online, but it's very possible somebody saves their procedures in one folder and somebody saves their procedures in another folder, organized in a different way. And this is where our solution, Presto, allows you to take those processes, that macro, micro processes. As you see on the left-hand side, there's Katie, she's head of corrections reporting. She's given us her macro, micro processes. If you go across from left to right on that screen, you see we have how many control steps are in there. In other words, her checklist. And then you have that last column of documents. You see immediately to do corrections reporting, we have 6 documents in the archive. And then you can see line by line how many documents support each micro process. And when you click on it, you go straight to the listing, the archive, the catalog of support documents, files, media files. They could be videos, training videos, stuff like that. You know immediately what they are, what format they're saved in, what status they're in. If you take a look on the right side, you can see the first one, brochure, archive of partner brochures. It's red, the status document missing. In other words, it's a document we want and we don't have it, but it's part of the IP for that process. And that immediately gives you visibility into where you have asset deficiencies and where you need to really focus your efforts.
And the beauty of this is that you might have a disparate filing system, but you can actually link the file wherever it is on whoever's computer. That's bad practice.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be sitting on individuals' computers, but in reality it does happen. And you can now link that file into a central place where you can understand, I am the COO in my department. I have these teams. These are the processes, the checklists, and the documents that my team need to use to do their job.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. And just to humanize this, we have Katie or Kathleen that's given us a quote here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a quote that she herself also said, and she basically, the next project that she got promoted recently to head of PMO office of Alvis. We convinced the organization to create a mini PMO to manage all the projects across the company. Katie was one of our superstars in the initial launch in the CQI program. And so she's helped us build the showrooms. I think MJ and Vincent, you guys both have seen our showrooms, how we train people with online interactive slideshows and videos on how to do these things and eventually load these things into our software solution. And when she was speaking about the whole CI journey, because up until this first exercise, this was her first, she had never had any experience in continuous improvement. And at the end of it all, she said, yeah, she goes, it's something that at the beginning, you're not going to see results, but you're going to know, you're going to have an instinctual intuition that this is the right thing to do. And then when you start seeing results, you look back and like, how is it that we've never done this before? You know, so yes. And that was interesting. I should have captured that quote and put that on the slide.
Yeah. It's I think something I've been trying to reiterate now a few times is there is an initial investment. It's not as intense as you think it is. I mean, MJ has helped the client doing it manually. It took them less than a month, and they were a fair size organization. Using a software-based solution, it can happen even faster. So it is intense. You do need to roll up your sleeves, But once you've done that, the efficiencies you can gain from that baseline are just remarkable. It's almost like this cartoon. We're so busy dealing with our rubbish, our day-to-day firefighting, trying to push this cart with square wheels, and there's a solution behind you, which, yes, you're going to have to take those squares off of your vehicle and unscrew them and put the wheels on and screw them in, and that takes time. You've got to pause what you're doing, but once you do it, wow, you really set yourself up to have massive efficiencies.
So true. And we have, from experience now, we have this we've built on our intuition. When you're having a discovery discussion with someone high up the ladder and they say now is not the time, we make a nice mental note, because we know immediately it will never be the time with you, and we don't even want to be working with this type of company. So it's a good sign that you're speaking to someone that has no intention of rolling up their sleeves.
Yes. And MJ, so there's this now we're talking about waste. Again, a reminder, please put your sorry, MJ, I'm now interrupting myself. But to the audience, please, if you've got any questions, we will be answering them at the end. And if there are some questions that we don't answer, we will also put together a Q&A that we will distribute after the webinar. So please, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. We are going to answer them at the end. And again, Moira has put a link there if you'd like to book a demo session with us to explore continuous improvement and this software solution that we're looking at today. Please feel free to book a session with us and take advantage of the offer. So MJ, the slide is about waste, and what has been your experience with businesses and having a culture of ignoring waste or not letting people talk about, hey, there's a problem in the business? Is that something you experience, or do you experience a different aspect, maybe a positive aspect?
Vincent, I'm not really a Lean Six Sigma expert, but again, coming from an IT background, even before my project management days, if something goes wrong in a system, and that's how I was taught, is you see how quickly you can fix it, and then when you can breathe, you go and you do an impact analysis, and you get to the root cause of the problem. Now, exactly the same is true for a business process. If something goes wrong in your business process, maybe you've got an unhappy client, or there's in the manufacturing process something, flaws in what you manufacture. You go back to your process and you analyze it, and you use your process and you see what's wrong, and you put the corrective measures in there. Or when you feel you need to automate, you need to go to your process. So people do that. Often they get onto a bandwagon flavor of the month type of thing. We now need to do continuous improvement, and then everybody is doing it and looking for things to improve, and then priorities change and they leave it. I haven't seen a company, I haven't experienced a company where they've got a true culture of really day to day, as part of my job, looking out for what can I improve.
Yes, and that's the key, is to create that culture. It's not an easy thing to do, but create the culture, at least create an environment where it's okay to say there's a problem, and not push
you
back.
know what, often I think on another occasion you said people resign because of their boss, not because of the job, but often people, and especially more junior people, come up with good ideas and they ignored, and they start feeling resentful. And maybe after a while, I've experienced that, where I said, guys, we have to do it this way, and then they bring in a consultant, and the consultant say the same thing, and oh yes, we must listen to the consultant. So you need to recognize your people who comes up with the good ideas. And you have to have a way of collecting those ideas, evaluating them, and implementing the right ones.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Oliver raises a point here that what brings him passion is human connections. So it's not so much about time spent, but human connections. And I think what I'm seeing in spending the time in setting up this baseline for your business, a new person comes into the business and we say, now they can understand their job without disturbing other people or creating as small a disturbance with their peers as possible. It's not about removing the human connection. It's about saying, to be successful in a new position or a promotion, you have to navigate the things that you have to do the job, and the people that you have to do it with, the culture, the undertones and currents that are not overtly disclosed. And if you've got a nice baseline where everything's very well documented, that is easy to be able to understand, and you can rather spend your time navigating the human interactions. Where what often happens is you spend the time trying to figure out where is this and what's this and when should I do this, and you don't get those human interactions the way you should, and that sets you up for failure. So get that baseline right, be efficient there so that the people element can happen more naturally. So going in from that, trying to create this culture, Andrew, do you want to maybe just talk us through this slide? And
Yes,
we're going to pick up our pace now. We're aiming to finish our presentation in the next 20 minutes.
So this is, to me, it's the heart and soul of continuous improvement. It's all about optimizing processes, and the best way to give your process owners a ticket to say, hey, guess what? It's your responsibility to make your processes better, is to teach waste management logic. And this is so underestimated. You know, if you work on continental Europe, they have the labor unions in the service industry. And I've seen many times where, you know, you're talking about waste management, and when you say waste, it's often looked at as an attack on somebody's work ethic. Like, no, there's no waste over here. My process is perfect. And this is where, when you hear continuous improvement, has to come from the top. Every person in the company has to be completely secure, and they have to be completely convinced that the president himself, herself, wants you to do this. That's where you're saying, okay, guess what? You do have defects. You do have excessive manual activity. You do produce too many things in certain moments. There is downtime and waiting. And it's not only your responsibility to know that, it's your responsibility to bring it to our attention. And as you can see here, quickly with the Alvis team, immediately 104 waste reduction opportunities. And how do you get a waste reduction opportunity? Well, very simply, you have a nice workshop explaining to process owners what the waste is. And this, before you even do that, you got to have a nice agreement at the senior level, or should I say at the mid-management level. What are the waste opportunities we want to go after? Because Lean has its methodology, Agile has its methodology, and, you know, every company, every country has, you can tweak it to really be more efficient. And in Alvis, I think we thought of 9 different waste types, and we said, let's go after these waste types. And as you can see here on the report, there's Zach is telling us he has defects and rework on his re-entry departmental scorecard standard check process, pathway for men, SAM report standard check. So these are all processes where he's identifying defects. You have a description of what the defect is. In other words, you have the process owner telling me, well, you told me what a defect is. This is where I think that this defect exists on my process. And then you have the opportunity description. That opportunity description, and I always highlight to everybody, so you can leave it blank. It's the responsibility of the company to put in a description in there of what the opportunity is to resolve it. Just because you're the process owner doesn't mean you need to know the answer on how to fix this waste. You know, the waste could be that you need to invest in a better application, a better platform. And once again, you should be able to count on the structure, the organization to help you put something in there. And then from that point on, you're speaking about cost and benefits. And you see the benefits, the 5 benefits that this company decides to report. They're saying, if we reduce the waste, what will be the impact on client service? What will be the impact on how accurate and precise we are, efficiency, how much risk reduction can we get from this, how much capacity can we create, in other words, how much time can we save, and finally, what will be the impact from a competitive advantage point of view. Does this make us one step ahead of our competitors? And this becomes super useful at the senior level when you're talking about strategy and you say, you know what, we really want to improve client service in the next 3 months. What could we do? And here's your answer. Go do a filter on this report for the company and show me all the waste reduction opportunities where the process owner has told you you'll get strong or very strong client service benefits back.
So I think at this point we should hopefully realize that continuous improvement is not about trying to cut costs. Efficiencies are found by getting this strong baseline of my company, understanding my organization structure, how my process fits into my functions, and the things that my staff need to do, the documents they need to use to do their job. Then those people that are doing the job can highlight wastes. And we then need a way for an executive to look from a helicopter perspective down at the business and see, well, these are the wastes in the business. Where are the opportunities now to do a continuous improvement, to remove those wastes and get the business better? And I think that moves us nicely into talking about PDCA, which is plan, do, check, act, and having a dashboard seeing that we have these projects, or we have these wastes, let's turn these wastes into projects, or we have a checklist of actions and we audit the work that we're doing. And if the outcome is acceptable, what happens? If the outcome's not acceptable, is there a project to try and remediate that outcome? So having a dashboard that's showing these initiatives. So steps 1 to 3, or mistakes 1 to 3, 1 and 2 set the foundation. Understand you've got to roll up your sleeves. Understand you've got to have this baseline of your business. Number 3 is get a culture where it's acceptable to highlight wastes. And then number 4 is elevate what you have now created as a baseline. Elevate those wastes in a way that management can take action. And when they take action, Andrew, just talk us through what PDCA is all about.
Thanks for this quote by Teddy Roosevelt, saying that the best executive knows how to distribute work and then get out of the way and get it done. And this is why you see a lot of bottlenecks in every company, big or small. And if you take a look at the next slide, basically we're talking about, okay, we got a huge dashboard full of waste reduction opportunities. Definitely not going to be able to go after all of them. Let's work together at the mid-level and the senior level to line these opportunities up with the company vision, with the company strategy. And when you start getting an understanding about where you really have some pain points, then you can start looking at that portfolio and start zooming in to the areas, to the people that are going to help you get to your next level. And at this point in time, you can see we've set up 5 phases of a CI project, of a CI opportunity. And the first phase before PDCA is the ACT phase. Acknowledge that there's an opportunity that could potentially make this company more efficient. And in that ACT phase is where you're going to get the approval to go forward, or the note to say, let's revisit this, or let's cancel this altogether. It's not useful for the company. But at this point in time, if you go forward, now you're in the PDCA, you're planning, you're doing, you're checking, and you're acting. When you're planning, as you can see there, who's the accountable party in that RACI matrix? Well, it's middle management. They're the ones that are going to say, do I have the resources that are going to allow us to execute on this plan? Now, middle management's accountable, but of course they're working with their team leaders, getting to the granular level, saying task by task, what are we going to do, who's going to do it, and when we're going to do it. And as soon as that phase gets closed, as soon as everybody's on the same page and say, yep, let's do it, launch it next month, you're in the do phase. Middle managers get out of the way, and you get the process owners, which are usually team leaders, that are now executing. Now, using our famous RACI matrix, as you can imagine, being consulted, being informed are the senior and middle level managers, depending on how high profile this activity could be. But of course, in most cases, you get the team leaders, the process owners getting things done. And they finally get things done. Now you have the middle management, maybe even senior management, their neck is on the line. Did we do it right? Are we satisfied? Let's tick the box and close it. And then finally, the project, the activity, the exercise was done correctly. Here's the phase where I think most companies neglect more often than not. It's the act phase. You know, something great was done. That people are celebrating success, but what's very important is that the whole company understands this. And if there's an opportunity to leverage this know-how, to leverage the knowledge that was retained during the activity, let's get it in the hands of the next team that's going to benefit from this. And that's senior management's role. And you see it happen all the time where the project dies there, project's done, there's another fire, let's all go move on that. And the rest of the company has no clue that a certain team has just done a great thing that could be valuable in another team, but we never connected the dots.
Yeah, MJ, to you, what is the value of this check and act phase? I mean, once the project's done, it's done. Why flog? I can't say flog a dead horse, but why? Why keep on going in circles? It's done now. Let's move on.
Yeah, Andrew said it, but again, from a project management perspective, it is important, and people often do this just as a tick list. Oh, we have to do it because it's on the project plan, but it is to, number one, celebrate the success that Andrew said, but also to debrief. Often after a stressful change, some people are frustrated with something. They feel annoyed with something, they need to vent. Some people need to be praised, but you need to allow people to give feedback. And then from a project management, for the project managers, it's important to record the lessons so that similar projects, next time you do it, can go and see what did we miss the last time. Right. And this ties in with continuous improvement is very important to say, we're not going to point fingers, but it's important to say, what did we do well so that we can repeat it, and what did we miss so that we can improve on it next time.
Yes, I really like what you said there about the human element of, at the end of a change, people might be a bit frustrated and there's some pent up emotion around it. And the check and act phases just help to transition people, that human element. I never thought of that. So
and people are normally annoyed at the project manager, and you should have done this, and you should have, because everything that went wrong is the project manager's fault, and I take it, but people need to, if they need to vent, you should give them a safe space to vent. Yes. But if they need to celebrate, you should give them that as well. It's not just about let's go for a big lunch or have a party. It's about acknowledging the people that's done really well.
Yes. And I just want to emphasize here that this PDCA, and there's actually the acknowledge in front of the PDCA, is essential for continuous improvement. If you want to have that culture in your business, don't just do the project. You've got to review, take lessons learned, and you plow that back into the business. That is your continuous improvement.
Yeah, and I see Oliver said his celebration must happen during the process, not at the end, and that is so true. And I think that's where the PDCA cycle repeats. You normally have project phases. For each phase, the PDCA cycle happens. So it's like a continuous cycle of
exactly
executing your tasks.
Yes. Okay, now we're ramping up to light speed to finish up in the next 8 minutes. The next mistake, number 5 out of 7, we're almost there, is the disconnect between HR and business. Now, I just want to explain what this means. Or perhaps MJ, I think you've got a nice way of putting this. Is there a disconnect between HR and business ops? And if so, what is this disconnect?
Vincent, HR people are my favorite people in the company, next to marketing. I think often they have a tough job because they need to know the business in order to help the business. But the business is very busy, and they don't have that time to sit and teach HR. So if you can find a way for HR to can see what the business processes are, what skills do you need in the business processes? What should my training program be? What's my career path for my people? You know, I should send Vincent on this course, but I should send MJ on that course. And I've got 5 people needing to upskill in this area. So let's get someone in. That's the information that HR needs. And it's often very hard for them to get it.
Indeed. So I think that fits neatly into asking Andrew, how do we solve that problem? How do we get HR the insight they need into what's happening in the business?
Yeah, I mean, you already have all the key elements at your fingertips now. And the first time I started working with HR a long time ago, and I was able to explain to HR, this is the process, these are people that do the process, this is what it means to be good at this process. And when I got them to connect the dots and see it that way, that's when you know you've really structured your data archive in a very good way, a very useful way. What you see here, just what's important is so that any person responsible for talent enhancement in the company or for learning, corporate knowledge retention can understand how many roles are allocated to teams, how many roles are missing people, how many places where you might have excessive people in certain roles. And then when you get to the personal level, how many roles each person has, how many processes they have from using the RACI matrix lens. As you can see on the right of this person, Max, you can see how many processes he's responsible for, accountable, consultative, informed, and then go one level even further, which we'll talk about shortly, is what level they're at. How, you know, we use our famous 4 steps to excellence to show if you're a beginner, if you're semi-skilled, if you're skilled, or if you're an expert. And immediately you can see here's Max, responsible for 4 processes. As you can see there, one of those is at level 4. He's an expert. You trust him to train other people. Another process is at level 3, and he's having difficulty. He needs support. He needs coaching.
So at a glance, HR can see, are we over or understaffed in a specific team? And in specific individuals, is that individual over or underutilized?
Yeah,
that's brilliant. And then going down to specific skills. So transversal skills are skills that are used across the organization. They could be soft skills as well. In this example, we've got software skills here. What is an HR practitioner seeing on this?
Yeah, so in this case here, I mean, using a classic skill that every company needs, we call them Microsoft skills. You need people that know how to use Excel, you need people that know how to use PowerPoint, you need people that know how to use Word, Access, etc. And here what you're doing, using our 4 steps to excellence, or in the lean terminology, the skills matrix, competency wheel, some people say, we're saying, okay, if I were to filter this on a level 3, as you can see on the right hand side there, if I'm looking at Sabrina, head of cash management, she has 8 people on her team that are highly skilled in PowerPoint. And then what you want to do is you want to drill to the next level and see who those people are. And the reason why you want this information, once again, aiming for a resilient company, a flexible company, you want to be able to fish out those people where you need them. So next month, we need to do 150 process maps of a new client we've just acquired. We need some Visio people immediately. So look at this dashboard and you know immediately who knows how to use Visio and who could be a good candidate for that role.
Brilliant. And just what is this that I'm seeing here on the left?
Yeah, so that's the famous 4 steps to excellence. So when you're looking right now, you're looking at a skill and you're saying, okay, if they have one piece of the pie, it means they have basic knowledge. They know about this skill, but it's just that 2 pieces mean they can practice this skill, but they need coaching. They're at that level. 3 pieces means this is a person you can trust to work independently. You don't need to coach them. And 4 pieces means you trust this person to train others to do this job. And this is the easiest way, this is the starting point to get team leaders just to observe quickly and say, I have 5 people on my team. This is what level everybody's at. And if you drill into this number from the dashboard on the right side, you see this. You see the details of this. So if we look at the MS Excel section, you can see there are 8 people there listed, and everybody is up to level 2. They can practice with help. When you start getting up to level 3, You have one person that's having difficulty, flagged in yellow. When you have one person that needs to be retrained, you flagged in red. So you immediately know where there's knowledge gaps, but you also know who the experts are who could be involved in cross-training, skill sharing exercises. And the beauty about this is it's just a matter of seconds where a team leader should be able to keep this updated. You know, they don't have to do this every day, but if I'm about to meet with that team leader because we want to talk about consolidating teams or talk about the talent pool, it shouldn't take more than 15 minutes to be able to tell me this report is spot on. Have a look at it before we have that meeting, so you'll know immediately who's good at what and where talent issues are taking place.
And then if we move over to process level.
Yep. So here you're just taking the same logic. Now you're bringing it to the process level that we spoke about at the beginning. And you're saying, there's Sabrina, head of the cash team. You see her processes listed out for her. You see she has 12 processes, but across the dashboard, you see immediately there's some red, there's some yellow. So you have people that are trying to learn their processes. So that you have one person that's trying to become semi-skilled at the process and they're having difficulty, and that's what that one red is showing you. You have 7 people that are trying to become highly skilled at their processes, or in other words, trying to do their process without coaching and they're having difficulty. You have 2 people that need retraining. And from there, if you want to zoom into that, you got that report at the bottom that shows you process by process, and then a list of the people that are responsible for those processes, what level they're at. And then when you really want to get put your planning hat on, you can start putting dates on those colors. You can say, you know what, this person's yellow right now. I want this person to be at level 4 blue by the end of the year. And those become growth targets that at this point in time, once you get to that level, in that level of visibility, there's no excuse for a team leader to fall back. Okay, you know what, we totally forgot to cross-train this person. We now have it visible. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you broke up for a second there, but I was basically going to say, so now HR can also utilize PDCA by saying, well, we've identified there's the skill shortage. We don't have enough highly skilled people in this area of the business, and they can propose a project which senior management can acknowledge. They then go into planning to upskill the people, and check and act afterwards. So
the first time I would add, the first time I utilized this, we weren't even that simple. I tried this out in the old days in a tax accounting team with the head of HR and the head of tax accounting. And the head of HR at the end of it said, wow, he goes, I've never had such granular, crisp visibility into what it means to be a tax accounting specialist just by looking at this type of information.
Yes, it's invaluable and so important. So HR struggles to understand what's happening in the business, but if we use a good solution, we can very easily elevate to them the skills, the processes, the people involved. Are they over or underutilized? Is the team over or understaffed? And in IT, similar issue. IT is not connected to the business, and so using a similar methodology, we can highlight to IT the different systems that are experiencing issues and problems. And IT can then again say, oh, well, this specific system's got 720 enhancement opportunities. We should log a project and get that to senior management that we can improve the system.
I would highlight with this is that the best way to have that discussion with IT is to show them the processes. And that's what you see here. You have the system matched to the process. So once you have that famous architecture process, you can now go to IT and say, look, we got 5 bugs that are hitting this process. If you fix these 5 bugs, this process is going to save 45 minutes a day when we carry it out. And that's where decision makers start feeling more comfortable to open up the purse.
Yes, exactly. I can associate savings to the money spent. Then an executive can easily make a decision. And in terms of ProThink, this is how we map out processes. So you can see, MJ, maybe if you can take 30 seconds and walk us through what we're seeing here.
Yeah, it's really a storyboard approach that we follow. So the blue blocks is the activities, the people with the gray arrows below them are the doers of the process, and then we populate it with all sorts of other information. Who do you interact with? Is it a meeting that takes place? Is it the email that happens? What's your inputs and outputs? what systems do you use, what controls do you need to put in place or are in place, time factors, etc. There's many more that's not on this picture, but we really build a story of the process.
A link to IT, we then can see on each step what system is being used in that process and the person that's involved in using that system.
Correct.
And then lastly, we've got KPIs and this concept of KPIs not being something that need to be looked at on a regular basis. And by regular, I mean a daily basis. So Andrew, if you can also just quickly talk us through, are there different types of KPIs and is there timing associated to when you should be looking at KPIs?
Yeah, I mean, this part for us, when a prospective client comes to us looking for KPI solution, the first thing we try to do is figure out how mature are they with the first 6 steps that we spoke about, above all the process capture, because it's happened to us so many times where somebody wants a KPI solution and they can't even name their processes. So their problem isn't that they don't have a KPI solution, it's that they don't have their processes and they don't know how their processes should perform. So in this case here, once you start getting down to the really low level of KPI management, you start seeing the big picture that, wow, I need to understand what processes need to be measured in which way. Best way to do it is to group KPIs into leads and lags. Leads are KPIs. Lead KPIs are the KPIs that push your business. So they're the things that you most of the time have control of. They're the things that when you focus, when you put discipline, things are going to get better. Lags are the impact. Another way to think about what's lag KPIs, it's what the board of directors looks at for only 15 minutes once every 3 months, once every quarter. They're looking at a couple numbers. If they're happy, great. If they're not happy, you're going to have to dive down into all those lead KPIs. And what you see here is how should lead KPIs, lag KPIs be managed? Well, if you look at the reverse pyramid, on the daily level, the people doing the work, the team leaders, the process owners, well, they're the ones that are checking the lead KPIs. They're trying to see, am I getting the amount of audits done that I need to get done? Am I getting the amount of hours we need to get certain things done? And on a daily, weekly basis, they're in a position to say if they're hitting their targets or not. And if they're not, make tactical adjustments that don't involve big decision makers. At this point in time, you start moving up the food chain. You have middle management on a bi-weekly basis. They're still interested in lead KPIs, but they're starting to focus more on lag KPIs, and they're starting to say, are we making targets? If not, do we have to push our people harder? Do we have to push our machines harder? Once again, talking about lead KPIs, not talking about big investments, but talking more about organizational tactical changes. When you get to the senior level, you start looking more at lags, less at leads, and you're starting to think, okay, you know what, we're just not hitting our targets. Middle management, team leaders have been putting in play tactical exercises, but perhaps we need to make more investment. Perhaps we need a new machine. Perhaps we need more staff. Perhaps we need to do some R&D and consider restructuring, stuff like that. And of course, your goal is to arrive at the quarterly shot clock with the board of directors for them to look at your short list of lag KPIs and have them sign off with a thumbs up. And that's Brilliant. What you really want to do.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So we basically come to the end. Again, a reminder of our offer. And while I'm just talking you through the offer, if you have any questions, I see we've got a few that have come through, which we'll gladly answer now. Please post your questions in the chat. A reminder of the offer for those of you attending this webinar. We're offering you a 30-minute consult, which normally comes in at $169. And in that consult, we're going to also provide you with a 9-step guide to implementing continuous improvement in your business. We'll give you an overview of Presto and associate that with your needs in terms of continuous improvement. And then you can take advantage of our offer of $25 per month for the Presto software. Normally it costs $33 a month. And of course, terms and conditions do apply, but we can discuss that in the 30-minute session that we have with you. And we anticipate that you would, when implementing Presto correctly, get a 30% return on your investment. So please, Moira has put a link in the chat there. Do book a session with us.
On to the questions. The first question asked by Quibus. Andrew, what percentage of value typically realized during versus post project or project implementation? So can you already see some ROI happening during the implementation?
To be honest with you, you really see ROI after people have taken things on board. So for just putting Alvis under the spotlight, you know, we're on year 3 with them, and we're really seeing efficiency for the fact that now the CQI team can go into another department and in a short amount of time get them to capture their processes, documents, KPIs, which Alvis has now been managing for over 6 months, first internally on the CQI team, now with other teams under the guidance of the COO. So the real efficiency I see now, as we're in this phase 3, we're calling it, is that everything that we did in phase 1 and 2, which phase 1 took us about 6, 7, 8 months, we can now do in less than a month and get positive buy-in from the teams. So, you know, I remember when we founded our company, you know, we went down a lot of rabbit holes, asking questions that were, you know, textbook business startup questions that, not looking back, well, they weren't really applicable. People asking us, oh, what's the ROI on the tool? What's the ROI on the solution? And back then we're like, well, we don't really know. And the big discovery is that CI, it takes time at the beginning, and it does, and it does take this investment. And if people feel like they're getting rushed, and you know, just because the directors want to move to the next department and launch the next wave without actually showing that they care about what happens, the results aren't going to stick. It's not going to be sustainable. So, I mean, from an ROI perspective, I mean, we even at the beginning, we capture projects, we capture opportunity, I should say, we transform those into projects. And the process is identify how many minutes are going to be saved and lock down those benefits before you commence the project. And at the end of the project, in the check phase, middle management has to say, yes, we did save those minutes. So it all depends on which type of waste you're going after and what was agreed.
I think it also depends on the maturity of the organization. If you have a fairly good understanding and grasp of your processes, they are already documented, but maybe not categorized by function, but you at least have well-documented processes, then you'll see an ROI later on in an implementation. But if you don't even have your processes documented, you don't know what your steps are, you will start to see immediate benefits because of the efficiency that you create in the team now, suddenly knowing, oh, this is what I've got to do. And this is the person that I need to consult and account to on this step of the process. Yeah. So yeah, maturity, I think, also has an impact. Absolutely. Low maturity, quick benefits; high maturity, longer benefits.
Yeah.
Vincent, there's also a question posed to you as an operations manager. How would you manage the introduction of new internal processes and integrate it with partner processes an operating model might include?
Quibus, if you can maybe just clarify, are you referring to using Presto, or how I would go about introducing a new process just generally? Processes generally. Okay, yeah, so generally I would start with change management. I think a lot of people forget change management and try and do it after the fact. So I would start by doing a stakeholder analysis, understanding which parties are engaged in the process that we want to introduce, educate them, say this is what's coming, and then go about putting the process in place, continually updating people as we are introducing the new phases of the process. But I think it's critical that you start saying this is what's coming before you go and implement the new process. I think, MJ, I don't know if you want to perhaps comment on that. You're on mute, MJ.
Vincent, no, I don't have any further comments.
Okay. Cobus, did we answer your question there?
While we wait, I would add that I really feel like, just from experience, I feel like a lot of people are making a mistake when they speak about CI. They're entering CI and they just start shooting out that ROI term, ROI. And I'm thinking to myself now, looking back, well, it's kind of useless. We speak about this until you tell me all your processes and everything's under control. Then we'll talk about what you can get back. But without those key elements, you're not really in a good position to make those type of estimations, you know. So
yeah. Okay.
So there's some comments coming through, and I'm sorry, I don't read the language stated there of who the person is, but by monitoring 6M change management, we are achieving target. So I think that's pretty much incorporated in what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. I see.
Jaco says he assumes that it's also pulled through to the company's balance scorecard and performance appraisals, all of this.
Absolutely, Jaco. The balance scorecard features strong. Obviously, this was an overview, but this is the projects and activities are driven by the balance scorecard.
And then Cobus is making the statement or asking Vincent, in a digital context, there are many partner processes to integrate with. How does that impact the way in which the operating officer manage external process integration?
Very carefully. The more complex the landscape, the slower you need to approach things. Yes, you need to be agile. You can't go into analysis paralysis and try and say, okay, these are to the nth degree every single aspect and facet that is touched by the internal process change. You need to get a good lay of the land, and certainly having a system like Presto that's well populated from the start will easily give you a lay of the land. So yes, try and get an initial lay of the land of what processes are going to be impacted by this change. And then start on the project, trying to mitigate the knock-on effects that is going to take place. But you're not going to be able to adapt to every or mitigate every single risk up front. Some of them are going to need to be mitigated as you go. And so I'll say, you proceed carefully. Don't go into analysis paralysis, but do proceed carefully in making the change.
Excellent. So I think we're paying demurrage fees because we're sitting in the harbour. But over to you, Vincent.
Yeah. So as we approaching the harbour. We just want to let you know of some events coming up. So we've got a webinar on blockchain on the 17th of August. There will be a link. In fact, there's the link. They have just been posted in the chat. And on the 16th, we will now dive deeper. 16th of September, we'll dive deeper into an aspect of what we've discussed today. And that will be around talent management. Which is the disconnect between HR and business ops will be touched on there as we dive into more depth around talent management. And I see the harbour there on the horizon. The tugboats are coming to pull us in. So thank you very much for everyone for joining us on this voyage, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Okay. I see.
Why is there so many people in the meeting room still?
I'm putting them in the waiting room. I'll put them there. And we should stop recording.